So let's jump back into the alien perspective part two then.
The Vatican has been studying extraterrestrials for a long time. There are usually a few reasons why non-human intelligence would want to interact with human intelligence.
The true communion comes between the phenomenon and mankind are the downloads, these non-human intelligent NHI downloads, where people claim to get information. And as an example with Spielberg. But I just heard, I think Jerry Bruckheimer is doing one as well.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah.
Obama and Michelle, they've got their own company and they're going to be doing the Barney and Betty Hill story. I have 3 or 4 more films that are in this space. So then you have to ask, why are they interfering in some aspects and not in others? He moderated the Q&A that I had after the Alien Perspective Part 2. And I had Paul Hynek on the panel with me because he's in the documentary. He talks about his father and the Socorro, New Mexico, and we do a phenomenal job, I believe, recreating that with animation. So you actually get to see Lonnie Zamora out there and everything, the beans. It's really fun. Awesome. And then Greg Bishop, who is a great mind in this. And so, you know, my job and any filmmaker's job is to take a section of the phenomenon and organize it and put it together in something that is trackable and is digestible and hopefully, if we're lucky as filmmakers, sparks your imagination and gets you thinking.
The following is a conversation with Dean Alioto. Now, Dean has been on the show before. He's one of my favorite filmmakers, and it's great to have him back on the show. But to reintroduce him to you, he's an award-winning filmmaker, director, writer, creator of the classic McPherson Tape, which literally created a whole new genre. I really love talking to Dean because he's such a passionate guy. He's extremely talented as an artist in filmmaking, interviewing, and presenting information in an intriguing, entertaining, and engaging way. He's got skills, there is no doubt, and I could talk to him all day about filmmaking. However, in this conversation, we discuss everything from UFOs, non-human or alien downloads, what the phenomena represents, and what it means to us as individuals, and why we don't consider what the alien perspective is in current discourse, which is handy because Dean's latest film is The Alien Perspective Part 2, which we'll also be discussing in this episode. And before I bring Dean on, let's watch the brilliant trailer to his latest film.
The Vatican has been studying extraterrestrials for a long time. There are usually a few reasons why non-human intelligence would want to interact with human intelligence.
They may be just as curious as we would be about them. They may just be the ultimate intellectual, that they are so curious about who we are that they may even tamper with where we're going.
People are calling this reception of information from non-human intelligence today a download.
Maybe eventually we're going to need to upgrade our minds regularly in order to keep up with the pace of technology.
Alien scientists have the same commitment to coming here and studying the anthill that is us.
Americans would never be in an asymmetric war unless we were invaded by aliens. We need to think about that. Why are they coming here?
I was contacted to take a look at the material and try to see what I can tell about the origin of the sample.
I think it's going to be shocking for a lot of people.
I think the last time we spoke, we were talking about part 1, the alien perspective. What's happened since? How have things been?
Things have been really good. It's been interesting because, again, the reason why I made these science documentaries is to open up the discussion. Why, as a filmmaker, would anyone make a documentary in an area where people have done that before? It is where passion comes into it, and also for me, it's where you're kind of dissatisfied, where you see a lot of docs and you go, okay, that's great, that's terrific, but they didn't ask the questions that I want, which is normal. And also, there's certain aspects of the phenomenon that I've not seen covered at all that I think are germane to the whole phenomenon. And so I got a chance to kind of put my money where my mouth is and to throw down. And again, this 1 year endeavor with 15 interviews ended up being 7 years and 66, actually 67 as of last weekend, interviews. And so so it's the reaction's been fantastic. The reviews have been awesome, and it's opened up a lot of things. When we went to Contact in the Desert, that's where you get a chance to see, okay, what is the pulse of this? And so across the board, it's been really terrific, and we did really well with our premiere, where we premiered The Alien Perspective Part 2. So yeah, all good.
Superb. How was Contact in the Desert? You mentioned there was a couple of mic drops there. How did that go for you? What was the experience at Contact? I've never been. I wanted to go for the last couple of years, but just couldn't make it.
I was pretty drugged up at the time, so man, I think it was good. It was great. I'd never been there before. And so I had heard that, no, this is, a high pedigree, and it definitely was. Captain Ron, who runs it, was just fantastic, accommodating in every way. He runs a really fun festival. There are so many great people, his infrastructure of people, Judy Chatterton, a whole bunch of like angels that are coming in to, help, if you will. It was the ultimate, UFO filmmaking camp. What I really loved about it is that I got a chance to hang with the people who, like me, the only difference is that, that I make movies about it, but people who are interested in the phenomenon. And so I haven't had nights where I've been, at any of these conventions where I've been up until 4 a.m. talking. And this was that, and really getting next level on a lot of things and testing new ideas. But the caliber of people that are there are, again, just top notch. So I enjoyed it. I look forward to going back maybe next year.
Yeah, some real superstars there.
Yeah.
You're looking through the trailer of your latest part 2. It's just the names. I mean, talking about caliber, some of the people in there are just. All right, here's a question for you, because I know that we get some incredible stuff on camera, but I always wonder when you switch that camera off, because I've had a little bit of experience of recording some people in person, and then you go, right, all done, cut, start taking things down, putting tripods away, and then you continue the conversation like, why didn't you say that on camera? Did you have any of those kind of moments?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I did crime shows, crime documentaries for like 20 years. And so that happens all the time. In fact, I will say, all right, we got that. So is there anything else? And then keep the camera rolling. And then they, do that. So we do have some of that. And sometimes I'll say, okay, we're going to roll the camera again. Like we start wrapping sound and it's like, okay, we need to get that. But it is interesting because when you're interviewing, you're asking questions, right? And so they're going to give you the answer to those questions. But what I always do is at the end of my interviews is I say, this is now your documentary. What is it that you wanted me to ask you? Or what is it that you wanted to say? And it takes them a while to kind of switch over in their brain. But usually what comes out of that are things that I never would have thought of. I certainly had that with Jim Peniston. Had it with Dinah Pasulka, who's the host of The Alien Perspective Part 2. Those are the things that I find yield riches, beyond what my, preconceived ideas were. And I thought, the bites I were going to get. Those were the mic drops usually occur.
Yeah, incredible. That's a great bit of advice. I'm going to take that on board. That's great. I love that. That's really good. I recently did a video with looking at some of the cases from Hollywood, I guess, and looking at how that intertwines with ufology over the years and how it sort of seems to predict the future and the potential, and it's quite speculative, of the sort of connection between people like Spielberg and maybe some sort of intel information coming through to try and loosen the public up, I guess, to some concepts. Do you see that? I mean, you're deep into this and have been for many years. You go back a long time. Do you ever see, or do you ever feel like there's this, I don't know how to put it, maybe a connection or, some information drip feeding through to filmmakers like yourself to say, maybe this kind of content would be useful for the public?
Yeah, well, as you know, there is a filmmaking cabal, and that it's an organized, unorganized disclosure. And there's a secret handshake, and we have pins that we have as well. Not on the outside, we have them on the inside. There's a lot of flashing. No, dude, it's none of that. I'm sorry, I'm going to throw down on that. None of that shit is true. It's hard enough to get a movie made, let alone get a movie made, with an agenda of what we have. If NSA, OSI, CIA, FBI, DOD, if any of them want to finance movies, then absolutely. If we had heard that they were financing films and stuff, then I would be like, all right, this is propaganda now. But that doesn't go on. Spielberg, he's got this new film coming out. He's only thinking about what can I do that's going to entertain and interest me, period. And so I don't think he has any more intel than we do, or the whistleblowers do. I think, he wants to tell a good story. And for me, because I do independent films, as well as, documentaries, like with my first film, the McPherson Tape, and then the follow-up, the sequel, Alien Abduction, Incident Lake County, it was just, I want to tell a good story based on what I had heard. So I want to recreate what the experiencers have experienced. And what is the best way to do that? And for me, it was using the found footage format. But I really, really, I would never invest in a stock that said, oh yeah, the filmmakers are preparing everyone along the way. I think the only time that they do that is when they've got new footage or something, intel. But, I've been saying for the past 5 years that now that all these documentaries and all the news has come out, usually what happens, like with music biopics, you've got Johnny Cash story, and then recently you have the Bob Dylan one. Those come from all these documentaries about those artists. And so I am expecting that there's going to be a plethora of UFO related material. And as an example with Spielberg. But I just heard, I think Jerry Bruckheimer is doing one as well.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah.
Obama and Michelle, they've got their own company, and they're going to be doing the Barney and Betty Hill story. I have 3 or 4 more films that are in this space that I'm working on getting funded right now. And so I'm going to be diving in it as well. So
yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess it's what interests you as a filmmaker, isn't it? And there's a big discussion there around how we're influenced as human beings in our life, and how that sort of transfers to whatever it is that we're doing. We sort of spoke of that before, in that what interests you as a younger person, how that kind of translates into your art, I guess.
Yeah, but I will say this, that speaking for myself, when I am doing fictional, in quotes, versions of the phenomenon, I'm free to explore things that might not have been covered. Like, as an example, one of the scripts that I have that may be the next one that I'm doing, I'm looking at craft as being organic or an extension. And that's kind of been covered beforehand, but not been covered in a substantive way where you see it, full on in a documentary. You see it played out in a movie with effects and stuff to support that. That to me is exciting. H.G. Wells, the stuff that he did was all precursors. I mean, how does this guy in the 1800s, early 1900s, how does he predict that there's going to be a booster rocket and there's going to be, separate sections to get to the moon? I mean, a lot of these things are intuitive, where you'll intuit things. And so science fiction and science are always, always hand in hand. And sometimes science fiction is just science that hasn't been proven yet.
Yeah. So let's jump back into the alien perspective part 2 then. There's a lot of, so I saw the Vatican, I've seen some AI stuff and how the sort of interdimensionality. What are the subjects that you dive into in this part 2?
One of the things that an aspect of the phenomenon that is, I think, I would say, it is where the true communion comes between the phenomenon and mankind, are the downloads, these non-human intelligent NHI downloads, where people claim to get information and to get inspired. And so it's not dissimilar from Paul McCartney saying that he woke up from having this dream with this melody in his head that became the song Yesterday. Except it's very targeted. As an example, Diana Pasulka talks about her research into our space program and the Russian space program and how that came about. Well, it turns out it came about through, one could call it divine intervention or NHI intervention, or inspiration rather. And so I find that to be truly remarkable. And we have a couple cases, one of them very current, where a download occurred. And that's interesting because that's nudging and shaping mankind to do something like that. And so when you do that, all of a sudden you have this box that you're presented with that you have to open that you didn't have before that has all these amazing things inside of it. Because if they're doing that, if they're affecting us, what does that mean? As far as like the like Star Trek, which was a prime directive, we don't interfere. Well, that sounds like some interference. So then you have to ask, why are they interfering in some aspects and not in others? And so we try to kind of look at those areas that they are inspiring and interfering even.
Yeah. How do you do that? I mean, how do you do that as a filmmaker? I mean, you've got this whole documentary where you've got all of these different cases, all of these different interviews, all of these different people, to then try and tell a story which essentially is an entire film all by itself within, a story within a story within a story. I mean, that's complex. How do you do that?
I give credit to Leslie Kane because she's in part one, a little bit in part two. She challenged me. She challenged me not to do a host, not to do a narration, and not to put myself in it and make it like a follow doc. Here's Dean going off in his UFO adventures. And so at first I kind of give a little pushback because I've done so many different docs and stuff. These are tools that you use to do that. But what it did was again, if I'm going to be in a new space for me that I haven't worked in, I want to, that's a space that's been covered by a lot of people. I want to make sure that I do something and bring something to it. Otherwise, what's the point? It's not going to get me up in the morning, and it's certainly not going to get people to watch it. So that really pushed me to be more inventive. And it took me several months before I came up with the idea that we would look at different aspects. Like the first movie, Alien Perspective Part 1, is looking at, where these beings may be coming from. And that encompasses so much, whether it's looking at we are living in a simulation reality, or they're from the future, or whatever we look at it. The second one, now we're saying, why are they coming here? And most documentaries, they'll either try to cover everything or they'll cover, certain aspects. This is drilling down on why the phenomenon exists. And by having these kind of almost like pods, we go focus on this aspect, like right out of the gate in the first 5-10 minutes. We go into breaking down the 3 reasons, if you will, for contact. What would that be? And we look at everything from to help us, to study us, to rule over us, or another option, which we get into. Things that we wouldn't necessarily think of. And so what I love doing is applying things outside the phenomenon into this. And I'm always amazed at how much that kind of relates. And some of that technique comes from projecting ourselves out, mankind out. What are we going to do in the future with another species? And you actually start to see motivations for things that wouldn't be as evident. My goal for any filmmaker is to take the abstract and make it understandable. And so because the phenomenon comes with so much stuff, including high strangeness, it really needs a way to be distilled and with the essentials. So anyway, that was the goal with Alien Perspective Part 2. And to also talk about certain things that have been out there and that have been only shown one side of it, like disclosure. We open that up big time, and we look at it from other aspects and what it actually means. And so, and then also one of the mic drops I'll say is there's a very, very well-known UFO, how do I say, I guess for lack of a better word, UFO researcher, an experiencer, whatever, who had been out there slinging this story. And we pretty much present evidence that null and voids everything he's said about this. And that was a challenge because, people enjoy. Some of this is entertainment, right? And so people enjoy hearing these fantastical stories. I enjoy that as well, but I don't want to spend time with a relationship of a truth and discover that it's actually a lie. And so this was an example where it was like, okay, enough of this, BS. Let's take this off everyone's plate right now because enough has been said about this. So we have photographic evidence that takes this guy down, and you'll see it in part 2, and it's pretty profound. When we showed it with the audience at Contact in the Desert, I was scared. I thought, am I going to get lynched? But everyone was like, no, thank you for presenting us with this, so we can do that, and it instills more trust in the filmmaker because he's willing to say, I'm not going to just show you shiny pennies, guys. I'm going to show you something that is not a currency at all. It's not worth anything. And so that was great to hear that they were welcoming it. So, but it's a pretty profound moment in the documentary.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's important, isn't it? It's important that's what we look for in documentaries, documentary films, is that we want sort of new information and we want it presented beautifully. We want it engaging. And I think there's a few sort of docu-films that we see that are just very much a rehash of the past, where it's like, look at this shiny thing, look at this interview that you've heard 1,000 times. So to have unique takes on things, have new information, that's what we're looking for. That's really important, I think.
Yeah. And also, because I'm a filmmaker, I wanted to make this a cinematic experience. So the way that it's shot, the way that it's lit, from the editing to the B-roll, all of these things hopefully take it up a notch. So you're looking at something that, you would see on Netflix or you would see on any other show. But to really kind of present it in a way that feels like you're watching something that's entertaining, but you're mostly getting your curiosity tickled. And so in order to really bring it home, we pulled in great animators who actually animate these scenes, including the scenes where downloads occurred. These animators are terrific. One of them is Arvid Steen, who his film won the Oscar. He did the animation for the Oscar-winning film Searching for Sugarman, documentary, that is. He's fantastic. And so you can actually see this. So rather than see really kind of low-end recreations, which sometimes you get relegated to and you just have to, to do that, where there's an actor who isn't really an actor, but he looks kind of like the guy or a woman, so let's have them do it. I can actually draw them to what they look like, what they were wearing, what everything was in that time. And because it's drawing, even though that's very, very expensive, I can be inside a cockpit, or I can be inside, of a forest, or inside the mind of someone. So
awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Where can people find this? Where can people watch this?
They can see it on part 1. The Alien Perspective part 1 is available on Amazon and on Apple TV. Part 2 is available exclusively on Apple TV and Google Play. And some people go, oh, well, I don't have Apple TV. Apple TV is a free app. You don't have to subscribe to it. You just download the app. The players are actually better than Amazon and some of the other streaming services. So you just download the app, and then you can rent it and buy it just like you would on Amazon.
Yeah, awesome. Have you been following the latest goings on with the UAP UFO world? Have you seen the stuff from Ross Coulthart and the drones and the Tic Tac news recently?
Well, I'm surprised to see that behind you is the Booga sphere, but it's on the grill of your heater.
No.
Is that intentional, or did that appear one night?
The Booger, where are we looking here? The Booger sphere?
Sphere, yeah, you've got kind of the burned in, the acid burned in uh, um, design that was on the sphere. You've got kind of a little bit of the shapes. Maybe it's funny.
Kind of.
The Booger sphere, I've been following that, digging into it. A buddy of mine went there
Oh, really?
with everyone. Yeah, he was there at the thing with Greer and the usual suspects. And I said, let me just do a little digging here. And the main thing that they're very excited about is in the middle of it. It looks like it is a microchip, and then it has little kind of tentacles coming out of it. So I did a little, Google image, search, and found that that image has been out, versions of that, since at least the 90s. Um, and that there's certain things that you can do. You can do acid, like a real strong acid burn, to have it be that, those patterns and stuff. Um, Again, I think we need to get it out of Mexico and get it to like what I do is when I'm having material analyzed, which is what we do in the Alien Perspective Part 1 and Part 2. And Part 2, we give the final results. We go to Caltech and we go to a guy who was a pioneer in extraterrestrial material, meaning asteroids and comets, and he's a metallologist, um, who everything that has to do with metal, he knows everything under the sun. So this is the guy that does that, and this technology from Caltech and stuff gets hired by all the industry and everything. And so, not that Mexico doesn't have it, but it certainly doesn't have it to that caliber. So that we got to get that sphere here if we really want to have it be analyzed, because right now there's a lot of people who are looking at it who are like, I'm a radiologist and this is what I see. Well, radiologist, that's not a definitive. It's a good start, but it's not definitive. So, yeah, I'm not sure about that one. That's on my,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know what you mean. I
What
know
do you
what you
think?
mean. I know what you mean. The thing is, I like Jaime. I've spoken to him before. We've chatted a bit behind the scenes. He's been on the podcast once or twice. Once. I like him, but he's very much a. I
Sorry,
found
who is this?
Jaime
Who?
Muson.
Oh, Jaime, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
he's,
yeah.
he's sort of in front of this thing and presenting it, and it's difficult because he's very sensational and he's old school in the way that he presents stuff, which is, this is amazing, this is probably what it is, and then he works backwards, to sort of evidence it. And sometimes you wish it was the other way around a little bit, and that he sort of did a lot of that stuff at the start. Because the same with like the Nazca mummies and stuff, there's the majority of them are just ridiculous and they're bits and pieces stuck together. But then there are a couple that are quite unique and they need a bit more, sort of research into them. And there's a lot of really heavy data coming out from some actual scientists who are experts in those fields. And I know that there's an American chap who's like the head of one of the sort of highest forensic experts, I guess, in I don't know, I'm going to butcher it by saying, but super expert in his field, and he's gone over to have a look at it and said some really positive things. But like, that's the problem when you present some of these other ones that are just bits of animals stuck together or whatever, and then you go, look at this, and wheel it out in front of Congress, and actually, no, they're not the really, that's not interesting. This other stuff is quite interesting, but you've got a year or 2 or 3 years worth of work to put into it before you can really present it as, look, we've got something quite unique here. Everybody come and have a look, and let's do some peer review and all that stuff. So he's just old school. He's old school, sort of Shazam, pizzazz. It's a shame. It is a shame.
Well, it's tough because it's, you got to look at the messenger, and the need to stay relevant as well. Again, you don't make money in this field unless you have books that are doing really well, and that's relegated to only a top amount of people, or you're making documentaries, or movies. And I know that people accuse other people of being grifters in this business, and I kind of laugh at that because I go, well, for what purpose? I don't see anyone really making a killing at that. I mean, if you're hawking something, like as an example, I will say this: I was on 2 panels at Contact in the Desert. The first one was about underwater submersible objects. The other one was disclosure. And so, 2 things. One is this question came up, and it was, at one point they opened it up to the audience and let them ask us questions. And I'm on a panel with Linda Moulton Howe, Danny Sheehan, Nick Pope, Russ Coulthart, Richard Dolan, and the usual suspects. And so the first question that comes to us is, this guy says, I know that we have underground UFO bases. And it just came out of my mouth. I said, how do you know this? And he said, more emphatically, I know that we have underground UFO bases. And I said, how do you know this, sir? And please be specific. Long pause. And then he goes, all right, let me rephrase that. I believe we have. That's the thing, is that people will intuit or feel something, but that doesn't make it so. You can say, I believe. Like me, I've never seen a UFO. I'm not an experiencer. I really want to believe. So I always say, because I have my friends will come up or other filmmakers, and they'll say, dude, what is the scoop on this? Blah, blah. Is this the internet? And I said, well, I believe it is. I never say I know. And so that it seems like a subtlety, but it's not. And so, but I'm on the panel, and this guy next to me, I won't say who his name is, but he says, I could tell that he's going to carve out a niche for himself, that he's going to be, that'll be his little, carpet bagging that he's going to be slinging. And he says, I'm really pissed off at these aliens, that they're coming here. This is our planet. How dare they? We need to get organized. We need to put together, an addendum, and we're going to go out and we're going to, do this, blah, blah, blah. And I looked over him and I went, I need to nip this in the bud right now. And I said, excuse me. I said, do you think that we know everything about the phenomenon? Like where they come from and everything? He goes, no, but it doesn't matter. They're coming here. And I said, okay, hold on. Isn't there a chance that we're ants in an ant farm and we're complaining about the place in which we're living? And we're saying, these people that are putting us in, get the hell away from it. This is our ant farm. We don't know where the ant farm came from. What if it's theirs? What if we're living in their, were they here beforehand? Did they seed us? Who are we to say you can't come here? Already that's like territorial, and we have enough of it on this planet. And so he tried it a couple times, and I just kept slamming him down and going, dude, seriously, life can be anywhere and can visit anywhere. So if they can't come here, does that mean that we can't go there? We're going to be kicked out of the Galactic Federation. So that was going to be his thing, that he was going to get invited to doing all of these, conventions and stuff, which, by the way, no one's getting rich off going to UFO conventions, right? We all know this. We do it because, we want to visit with similar minds, and we want to be able to try theories and theorems and have lively discussion about this. And that's the only way that you start to understand something, is if you, collectively, a group of people can walk around a car and kick every single tire better than you can, one person. But the thing that's interesting about this phenomenon is that it isn't just 4 tires. It goes on and on. So you're kicking tires, from now until, 3000, yeah. But anyway, it always cracks me up when I hear the term, because it's like, even if someone's trying to hawk something, it's people are going to believe what they believe, and some of that is on the believers. It's a test, and sometimes people have to get burnt. There's a lot of people that are paying a lot of money to go out and have these experiences. Some are generated, even if they're legit. Why would you have to pay to do that? So, I've never done that before, but I've talked to some people that have had mixed results. So it might be happening, and I'm not saying that it isn't. So, but I just feel like this is, open source, if you know what I mean. This should be open source to everyone, Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure that the aliens are not charging, for a ride on the sports model. I'm pretty sure that hasn't happened yet.
I mean, I would pay. I would definitely pay.
I would pay. Hell yeah.
Definitely. Oh yeah, I would remortgage my house for that. But yeah, I mean, people have got like such strong opinions, and people can be quite easily offended, I think, if you don't align with that opinion. And it's an interesting space that we're in because people have, they come into this, and I think once you're in and you're sort of hooked on it, it can be all consuming. And I think if you then say to somebody, well, I don't agree with that, and I think maybe that there's some evidence that suggests this, or it's difficult to break people from that, from their way of thinking, and to bring them over to your way of thinking and to sort of agree on stuff. And I mean, I try and be as open as I can be with other people's thoughts and perspectives. But sometimes, certainly when you're making videos and putting them out on the internet, and you read the comments and stuff, and people are just like, you are a stupid idiot, you're a CIA plant, you can't think, how could you think that? How could you have that person on? Or I'm like, whoa, we're all in this together. Let's just work in harmony and see what we can find.
Oh, I had someone give me shit because I didn't use the term craft right. I said there are crafts, and they said you should just say there are craft. And I'm like, okay, you're right. But I'm a filmmaker, so I'm used to, people are always going to be, criticizing you. I've never taken it personal. I look at it and I go, and sometimes I respond. There was someone, what they say, they said to me, you're interrupting this guest, because I was filling in for podcast UFO for Martin Willis,
Oh.
and I was interviewing someone who he runs long, and he's always pushing the agenda in a certain way. And I've already interviewed him for my documentary, and so I have a shorthand with him, and so I would say, hey, let's get back to this. Let's get back to this because I've only got a certain amount of time with him, et cetera. And so I know you've experienced this before. And so it becomes a matter of saying, let's focus on the question and not the agenda that you have, that you want to be on the show. And so someone wrote me and said, hey, maybe try interrupting less and listening. And I said to him, yeah, here's the reason why I did that. However, I will work on coming up with that, doing it in a better way, because I always want to listen, because the only way I'm going to get better at what I do is by listening to people who have ideas, whether you can use only a portion of them or not. And so I came and I said, hey, I'm sorry I did that. And then he emailed me back, and he said, he literally tracked down my email. This wasn't even done on a public forum. And he said, yeah, no worries, man. He says, I've always had problem with that, with interrupting people. I've really had to work on that myself. So he was projecting out. And so whenever I get someone who's being a little bit too passionate, let's say, I look at that and I go, okay, well, this is something that is passionate for them and personal for them, and it might be a place that they're wounded, whatever. But that's what's great, is that you put something out there. Either people are going to like it or not. I mean, the biggest piece of crap movie is someone's favorite movie, and the biggest, most wonderful film, someone says is just a manipulative piece of crap. And so we all have different tastes. That's why we have more crap on the menu than just peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I had very similar experiences with people. I mean, I try and reply to a lot of sort of messages. Obviously, I put out tons and tons of content and short form, so there's loads and loads of comments and stuff, and as a result, lots of people have got opinions on it. But I try and be funny with it, and I will get, as you say, like a comment after is like, "Oh, sorry about that. I'm having a bad day, or this happened, or that happened."
Oh, my favorite one was I had so Martin had me fill in last minute on this guy I knew nothing about, and he was a new figure in this, so I wouldn't know anything about him. So I'm literally asking him, discovering things real time, and so as you're trying to ferment these questions, you're going, right? So what? And so this guy called out my ums and my uhs, and I hit him back, and I said, look, next time I'm on, you should make this a drinking contest. Every time I do an or you take a shot, dude. So anyway.
Yeah, I get the same. How strange. My first 50 podcasts were like, dude, you say a lot. Try and work on that. I'm like, I was kind of offended, but it was also true. It was very true. I do say and so a lot.
Yeah. I do that as well. And it's part of communicating, and also it's there were so many different, like you and I, if we were to break down how many questions and how many offshoots we've gone just in this amount of time, it is dozens because there's so many different aspects of this. It is hard to be able to kind of consolidate all of it into a perfect answer, perfect soundbite.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're quite right. It's difficult. I can imagine it's really difficult I mean, I feel like it's difficult for me to formulate questions on the go and to try and listen as well as thinking about what you're going to ask the person next. I think that's one of the hardest things is you want to be actively listening rather than thinking about what you're going to say next and not taking it in. And it's really hard to do both of those things. I try to listen and, I've kind of got an idea of what I want to ask and sometimes you go off somewhere else, but it is really hard. But I can imagine just being firing off questions at somebody and sitting there going, right, I've got to respond to this. It's got to be, it's got to be intelligent. It's got to sound good. It's got to be worthwhile for the person's podcast, and all of these different things come into play. So like, I get asked to go on other podcasts quite a bit. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going on anyone's podcast. No, thank you. I like to, I can do some editing myself, and if I sound like an idiot, I can just cut that little bit out.
All right. No, it's, you also have to give yourself a break whenever you're doing these because I think ultimately we're struggling in the dark. It's not like we're discussing, say, soccer. And even soccer, you're going to have areas that people go, no, 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 that was the wrong call. The Monday morning quarterbacking, as we say in football. But there's certain tenets of, principles that are there that it just are. This can be anything. So, it can be a soccer ball, it can be a baseball, it can be a hockey puck, all within the same game. So it can get confusing, and we're struggling to catalog this, and we're struggling to, put a face on each of these theories and then weigh them. It's a challenge, but, I think it keeps our minds nimble. To be munching on this, as I always like to say, I'm going to go munch on this new theory that I heard, and I'll call Michael Masters and go, dude, what about this? Yeah, I mean, that was one of the fun things when I was interviewing Masters. We were talking about the hybrid program. And I said, it's interesting. They only talk about hybrids with grays. No one's ever said, oh, I saw my baby from a reptilian, or I saw my, child from a mantis. So that kind of lends credibility to the idea that they're us from the future because they're more, an extension of us. And so, that makes more sense, especially when we can't mate with primates on this planet. The idea that a creature from another planet whose DNA, there's no way in hell it's matching ours, comes here, and we're able to, again, this is the hybrid hypothesis or what experiencers, most of them have experienced. It's, it's interesting. And so, there was a bite that I couldn't put on in the documentary where Michael said, you could do such and such with a goat all day long, but you're not going to get a goat man. So, yeah, I mean, I really enjoy, I just interviewed Diane Hennessy Powell for this, one of the other two documentaries that I have after this, after Perspective Part 2. And it's a chance to kind of, pull together, a guest over at your house, even though I'm usually going to their house. And, so it's like being invited to come and say, let's have some conversation. And, I just always enjoy that. And I always enjoy getting educated, and being shown the door with my own theories that aren't, that are half baked or not there. I love that. Well, that doesn't work because this and that. It's like, oh, thank you. Okay. Now I won't be, bringing that topic up again. But yeah, I mean, it's all about getting educated and curiosity, which is why, like David Foley, I have a moment where he and Michio Kaku kind of have a back and forth thing where Michio says, I think that the aliens will look at us like ants, and be bored with us. And so, Foley shoots back, well, we have entomologists So there are people who do study ants. And so that's, not a good example. I think curiosity is the key to intelligence. And the more curious you are, I think the more intelligent you are.
Yeah. I love Dave Foley. I love that guy. He's awesome. I had him on the podcast before. He's such a cool guy. Such a just down to earth, sweet guy. Love him.
Oh, yeah. And can I throw one more name your way?
Yeah, yeah.
Thomas Jane. So the actor Thomas Jane, who's in The Expanse, who played the Punisher, he's come out of the closet full on in this. And at first, I was kind of like, because there are a lot of actors who are interested in this, and there's a lot of actors who are kind of on the down low, with this. Filmmakers, musicians across the board, it's a great cross section of all of them, but he's willing to go out there. He moderated the Q&A that I had after the Alien Perspective Part 2. And I had Paul Hynek on the panel with me because he's in the documentary. He talks about his father and the Socorro, New Mexico, and we do a phenomenal job, I believe, recreating that with animation. So you actually get to see Lonnie Zamora out there and everything, the beans. It's really fun. And then Greg Bishop, who is a great mind in this. Yeah, I mean, he'll say things like, studying the phenomenon is really studying ourselves. And as John Keel said, and this is mentioned in the documentary, if you study the phenomenon, you look out in space long and hard enough, you're going to end up seeing the back of your own head. And so, anyway, I feel like Thomas Jane, when he was moderating this, he had questions for me that I was stammering, like, hold on, wait, what? Usually you get the standard questions, this or that's coming, and there's certain people that do even podcasts, I'm glad to be back on your podcast because I feel like you're able to find something or you hit something or you're throwing a target and say, hey, let's aim for this, which is enjoyable for me being interviewed. But Thomas Jane was fantastic, man. He was asking, me questions and stuff that were next level that I hadn't thought about. And so, there are some people out there that are, coming into this that do have something to say. And I don't know if I don't believe if, I thought I heard that Thomas might be even writing a book, but he's been going to a lot of these conventions and stuff. So it's worth looking at him and maybe even having him on your show. I might do something with him in the near future here as well.
Yeah, great idea. Is he in, am I right thinking he's in the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance or has joined recently, the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Not sure.
I'm sure I heard that name.
Maybe.
With old Dan Harari.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Well, I mean, I could talk to you for hours, mostly about filmmaking, just because I'm obsessed with it, and I don't know if my the people that follow the podcast will thank me for that, but just my interest in how you record how you arrange, how you film, how you set a scene, all of the stuff that goes into it. I could just spend hours and hours picking your brain. I mean, you do such a fantastic job. The way that you put it together and package it, and how the hell, do you say 70 odd interviews, 70 something, you'd planned 15?
I just did the 67th interview with Diane Hennessy Powell of the Telepathy Tapes. Interviewed her literally 3 days ago. And so I keep thinking I'm done. I might be interviewing Danny Sheehan because we're doing a documentary on John Mack and he knew him well. So I'm going, God, I keep saying I'm done. I feel like Godfather 3. I try to get out and they keep pulling me back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've just accepted it. It's something that is telling me. I feel like these documentaries, I feel like they've made me, I'm trying to say this without being too colorful. Well, it's made me its bitch. It's really, my job is to get out of the way and to just say, okay, what do you want to do? This just came up. Now we're going to have to go and do that, and pursue that. We just heard this new theory. Let's go do that. And so I feel a lot of it has been this meditative state. A lot of times when I'm editing, I just feel like I'm meditating. Hours go by, like minutes. You go in the zone. But yeah, it's just so fascinating. And so, my job and any filmmaker's job is to take a section of the phenomenon and organize it and put it together in something that is trackable and is digestible and hopefully, if we're lucky as filmmakers, sparks your imagination and gets you thinking, you know. And then, we get another side of this puzzle because really right now it is a big puzzle, right? And so we have some pieces in the middle, we have some pieces around the edges, but we don't have all the pieces. And the rub with the phenomenon is that sometimes a piece that fit in perfectly stops fitting in. And you're like, oh, I was hammering, that in. And so, you know, there's just so many aspects of it. We could talk forever, but yeah.
And you still love it. You still have the passion for it. That's not going away. It's only getting stronger. Is it the same? How do you feel about it? You've dedicated a huge chunk of your life to the phenomenon now.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have moments where, like a year and a half ago, I needed a break. I needed to refill the engine, and so I went off and I did this independent film called The Last Podcast, which is a supernatural dark horror comedy. That's made the festival rounds, and it should be hopefully coming out later this year in theaters or early next year. And Dave Foley actually has a cameo in that as well. Yeah, so I take like little breaks. You have to. I mean, it becomes, too much. You become your own echo chamber. And so I always want to get to a place where, like sometimes I'll call Foley and I'll go, yeah, I'm not feeling it. I don't even care about the nuts and bolts anymore. I'm more about the experiencers. And then something will come up and you go, okay. But you have to cleanse the palate every once in a while. It's never been, grind, because then, you become repetitive and redundant. So I do take breaks.
Yeah. That makes sense. Makes sense. Awesome. Okay, Dean. Well, look, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. As always, I love talking to you, and I love picking your brain about stuff and getting an insight into what it's like making this stuff. And I look forward to giving this a watch. I'm going to try and fire it up tonight. I'm going to have a conversation with somebody else, I think, in a little bit, and then I've got a couple of hours available. So that's my plan for the evening. I've got Apple
Right
TV.
on. It's a quick view. It should go by fast, but yeah, let me know what you think.
Yeah, definitely.
Of it. And again, this is equally fun from last time. And yeah, keep it going, man. You're doing good work.
Absolutely. Will do. Thanks, buddy. Really appreciate that. Take care of yourself. Speak soon.
You too.